Hey, I'm Jamie from Stillmeyer Games, and today I'm here with no editing because my coworker Joe is out of the office this week, but that's okay. I wanted to film this video because I just spent, not the last 4 days, I'm filming this on Tuesday, last week, I spent Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at a convention that I love here in St. Louis called Geekway to the West. Geekway is a convention that, it's not an exhibition, there is a small vendor hall, but it's mostly focused just on playing games, and very loosely playing games. Like, it's not really an event-driven convention. A lot of conventions you go to, you'll schedule an event, which means that you'll kind of sign up for an event, a specific time slot to play a specific game. Geekway is a lot more free-flowing, and I encourage that. That's my method of playing Geekway. I just try to wander around and play a wide variety of new-to-me published games with a wide variety of people, and I have a blast doing so. And so this year I got to play 13 new-to-me games, and then 5 games that I'd already played before. And so I thought I'd share my quick initial thoughts about each of these games. And if I remember, I'll try to include a game like, if you like this game, then you might also like this game, as I mentioned them. The games that I had already played prior to Geekway to the West that I was playing again were Boop. Boop is a really cute abstract game. And I had played it on Board Game Arena, but I hadn't played the tabletop version. And the designer was very kind enough to drop by and give me a copy, which I thought was very, very nice. So I look forward to playing this. I actually did, I taught it to 2 little girls, some friends, kids of a friend, and they had a blast with it. I also played disc golf. I invited people to join me for a round of disc golf on Sunday morning. I played Race for the Galaxy, a game that I hadn't played in many years, and I think I appreciated it more this time. I haven't had the greatest experience with Race for the Galaxy because of the overabundance of icons that are not particularly intuitive to me. I feel like I'm relearning the game every time I play, but I had a lot of fun playing this time, so I might get it to the table again. I also taught and played Libertalia, our game, Libertalia Winds of Gilchrist, and I taught and played Red Rising. So let me get to the new to me games. Again, there's nothing on the screen today because my coworker Joe is on vacation. He does the editing. I just filmed the video. But I wanted to put this video up soon after Geekway. So you're just going to hear me talk for a while. If you want to see any of the spellings for any of these names, I'll include them in the description below, along with links to The Mill, the t-shirt I'm wearing that'll make more sense in a minute, and the article I wrote this week about Geekway to the West, as well as Geekway. I would love for you to attend Geekway to the West next year, 2024, or in the future, whenever you're watching this. Come, say hi to me, play games with me. I would love to see you there. So I'll do these in chronological order if I can find... Actually, no, I'll do these... I have them printed out on pieces of paper, so I'll do them in that order. So the first game, this is one game that I actually brought to the convention. I'd read a great review about the game Spots, and I thought it would be a nice game to carry around and play a little bit, and I ended up playing it twice. Learned it, taught it, played it twice. Spots looks like this on the table. This is... it's a couple different things. It's mostly a push your luck game, where you are, on your turn, you're choosing one of 6 available tricks. And there are a bunch of different trick tiles in the box. There's also a starting 6 that they recommend. You're going to choose one trick, and as you are performing that trick with your dogs, your active dogs, you'll roll some dice, and you'll place those dice on the dogs themselves. You can see the dogs have different spots on them. Those spots are the dice. And you're trying to place dice on the dogs without busting. You have your buried dice here, and if they ever add up to more than 7, then you bust, and you have to wipe all the dice off your buried area and off all of your dogs. So that's one thing you can do in a turn. You can try to complete a trick by rolling some dice. Each of these are their own little mini game that are a lot of fun. Or you can complete a dog. So if a dog already has all the dice that it needs on it, then you can just complete that dog and reserve it, kind of set it aside so that it can't be wiped in case you bust in the future. It's a really cute game. It's really satisfying to roll the dice, to pick your mini game whenever you're ready to do that. Pick the one that's right for you. And I had a lot of fun with this. So if you like X game, you would also like Spots. So this reminded me a little bit of Quacks of Quedlinburg down here. It's a little bit like a much lighter version of Quacks of Quedlinburg because you have not different meanings for the tokens. That's the comparison to Quacks of Quedlinburg, but rather different mini games that you're choosing. I would also say if you like Spots, you might like Kraken Skulls, which appears later on the list. I'll talk about that later when I get to my photo for it. But that's Spots, the one game that I actually have to show you here. The rest are all photos. So Bug Council of Backyardia played thank you for Pete for bringing and teaching this. This is a trick-taking game that has a revolving trump suit. In fact, every suit is essentially a trump suit at different times based on the number of tokens that are on these different slots. So you can see the 5 different colors in the game, suits of cards, colors of cards. Those are the different potential trump suits. So the current suit that has the most tokens, so like blue has the most tokens, so it beats the other factions, the other colors, the other suits. But then red, I think, has 2 tokens in this photo. So red is better than green and purple, and so on around the table. It really, there's no order here. It's just you look at the number of tokens, that determines the suit. I thought that was pretty clever. And the person who, the way that you determine this is that if you play the lowest number in the suit that was led for each hand, then you get to pick up all tokens from this mat here and then place them on each, place them in rondelle format, like Mancala format, clockwise on each of the other spaces. So pick up all the tokens, place them one by one around this little Mancala, which is a neat little mechanism in itself. The game also features a really fun choice at the beginning of each hand. There are 3 hands that you play, and your choice is if you are going to try to go nil, to try to not win any hands, or if you are just going to try to win as many hands as possible. And either way, this is kind of one of the nice things about the game. Either way, even if you don't successfully go nil, you still get points for every hand that you won. Rather, the bonus if you go nil is slightly different than the bonus if you don't go nil. You can look more into the game if you'd like, but those are my kind of general things that I wanted to highlight about the game. It reminded me a little bit of, there's another trick-taking game where the suit, the kind of the trump, every suit could be a trump suit at any given time in relation to the other suits. And that is, what is it? It's the game with where you wear a mask, like luchador masks. Masked Men. Masked Men is the game that has a little bit of a similarity to this. Yeah, so that is Bug Council of Backyardia. Next up, we have one. So I spent one day playing only 2 games. A lot of the days I was playing a lot of different games. One day I was playing heavy games all day, just 2 games. The first of which was Revive. Thank you to Nathan for teaching this, and Andrea and David for playing it with me. Revive is a pretty heavy game about civilization kind of rebuilding itself, although it's not a civ game, rebuilding itself after the world has frozen over. You emerge from under the ground and you explore this area up here, do a lot of interactions up here, but you also have a very big, very robust dual-layered player mat where you're spinning out on this little tech tree. You're playing cards on your turn, and yeah, it's a very satisfying, heavy Euro game. A lot of mechanisms in this game too. I'll highlight one that you can kind of see here in this photo, which is I don't always love games that have bonus actions. So in this game, you can take 2 different actions on your turn, and then there's a way to get bonus actions. And this game, I think, does it really well because it has these little lightning bolts. You start out with 1, starts right in the middle here, and as you expand out on 3 different tech tree-like things that you unlock from the board, you increase the number of bonus actions you could take, and you claim those actions by picking up one of your lightning bolts and placing it on that action. And you can increase the number of bonus actions that you have by doing other various things. There are other ways to get more lightning bolts. So at certain points in the game, there were players that had like 4 lightning bolts, and so that meant that they could take up to 4 different bonus actions, but you could only take each bonus action once until between refresh turns, because you take the lightning bolt, you place it on that action, it covers up that little bonus, and so you can't gain it again until you've removed that lightning bolt from it. And I just like that the lightning bolts were tactile. A lot of bonus actions in games are just a list of things to remember, but it's an actual token that you're picking up. You can see it on the board, you can see that you haven't used it yet or that you have already used it, and you can see the bonus actions clearly that you've unlocked on your display here. You've earned them, and so they're easier to remember than I think other bonus actions that I've seen in games. So I really like that system for bonus actions in the game Revive. Among many other mechanisms, I'll go in more detail in an upcoming video. The other really heavy game that I played on that same day, back-to-back, was Mosaic. And this is a civilization game. Very different feel than the civilization game I designed, Tapestry, but a lot of fun. You can see here that one of the things that I did is I went heavy after the tech cards. There are a lot of things you can do in this game, and one of the remarkable things really about Mosaic is that the turns are really short and simple. Like, you are literally just doing one thing on your turn and then moves on to the next player. And I love that. I love the quick and simple turns in a game that lasted around 3 hours, 2.5, 3 hours, with a lot to do. So I thought that was really nice. Quick and simple turns, and the tech cards were really satisfying. One of the goals in the game is to get 6 of a specific icon. And so the tech cards, I could, like you can see here, I have, I believe I have six of certain icons. I can't really see them in the photo, but I like having that clear goal. I want 6 of this icon, so I was constantly trying to get tech cards that got me to that level. But some tech cards require other icons for you to even gain or play those tech cards in the first place. So you can gain them, but you can't play them. And so that was a nice puzzle to solve, getting one card so I can play other cards. There are a lot of, again, kind of like Revive. This is a heavy game, a lot of different mechanisms. I'll just focus on this one thing. Oh, and I totally forgot for Revive, if you like X, you would also like Revive. What did it remind me of? I don't know. If you like heavy games, I think you'll like Revive. And if you like, I don't know, I kind of want to say Tapestry, but Tapestry really is quite different from Mosaic, other than the quick and simple turns. I would almost maybe say Nations. Nations doesn't have a map, and Mosaic does have a map. But Nations reminding me a little bit of Mosaic. So if you like the game Nations, I think you might also like Mosaic. Up next, I have, Horrified. So one of the few, maybe even the only cooperative game that I played today. And this is the connection to The Mill. The Mill is the one thing that Stonemaier Games sponsors. It is a channel that we sponsor where they don't share their opinions necessarily about Stonemaier Games. Sometimes they do. They're not reviewers. They just kind of share Stonemaier Games news. They foster a community of people who care about Stonemaier Games, basically. It's run by Dusty. It's also, now Dusty was joined by Molly and Carol. And so it's this great team of people, wonderful people, all of whom came to Geekway for the first time. I think Dusty has been before, but Molly and Carol had not been. I had never met either of them. And it was wonderful to sit down with Molly and Carol and their partners and play Horrified. Horrified is and I'll include a link to The Mill in the comments below, or in the description below in case you're interested. Horrified is a pandemic-style cooperative game, that comparison being that you are playing against the game. The game is actively trying to make you lose the game. And I really love the theme of it. You play as a team against a number of monsters. You can scale the number of monsters up or down depending on the difficulty level that you're trying to play. We played with 3 monsters. And each monster comes with its own unique minigame. It has something that you need to do to even really play the minigame, and then a way to solve the minigame. So for example, this is the Mummy, and the Mummy has this little numerical minigame that you need to play, that you need to unlock. And actually, I said that a little bit incorrectly. You need to use resources in the game to play the minigame, and then once you do that, you can defeat the monster with a simpler mechanism. You need to go to where the monster is and discard some tokens. I was really impressed by how well they incorporated the theme into this game, because you have each monster with their own little asymmetric puzzle that you can pay attention to. Each player has their own little asymmetric element as well. But like the tokens that show up on the board, they each have meaning in the game. They each have a specific thing you're trying to do. You have villagers that show up that wander around, and the monsters try to kill those villagers, and you're trying to protect the villagers. And then with the monsters, not only with their asymmetry, but each of them has a lair. You're trying to go to their lair to kind of solve this puzzle, solve the minigame puzzle, and then you need to go to the monster themselves to remove the monster from the game and not have to worry about them anymore. It just came together really well. It's a really, really solid play against the game style cooperative game. I would say if you like Pandemic, I think you would like Horrified. I'm trying to think if there's any other game like that. In fact, I would specifically say if you like the Cthulhu version of Pandemic, I think you would really like Horrified. Thank you to Molly for teaching this one. Next, I have my first trekking game. There's 3 games in the trekking line of games, and this is Trekking Through History. Thank you for Jeremy for teaching this one. So in Trekking Through History, you kind of have 2 different puzzles that you're trying to solve. One of them is you're trying to align these cards from history in a timeline, and from oldest to newest. And if you do that, the longer the streak you can maintain of such cards in that chronological order, the more points that you get. At the same time, each card that comes out here has a different benefit at the bottom of the card. Like it might have a blue token or blue icon, and I don't know why. Oh, that was wild. I might have a yellow icon and a green icon on a card, but it's also paired with another icon or another token on the board itself. So you can see here, if I claim this card, I can't see what's on the card itself, but when I claim that card, I also claim a green token. I like that kind of benefit pairing there. But really in the game, I was fixated on trying to create and maintain this long timeline of cards. I didn't do all that well at it, but I tried to do that. But I really like the the push and pull between that and trying to get the right icons to complete your passport, your time passport here, where you're trying to create, complete different columns, complete different rows to get points, to gain different time crystals along the way. And this is all tied to a one-way time track mechanism where you're spending time as a resource to complete these cards or to gain these cards. And it's only your turn if you are the furthest back in that timeline. Again, using time as a resource in a game about traveling through time. It's actually a really solid time travel game for such a game that's easy to learn, easy to teach. Trekking through history. I really had a lot of fun with this. It's a good gateway game, I would say. And if you like... What's a game? If you like X, you would like Trekking Through History. If you like Tokaido, I would say if you like Tokaido, I think you would enjoy Trekking Through History. Next up, we have HerStory. We were very fortunate to have the designer Danielle at the table to teach us and answer questions about HerStory while we were playing this. And I had a blast playing this with David, Sky, Jacob, and Greg. We played this game about creating a book with 8 different chapters about famous and amazing women throughout history from around the world. The game feels a lot like Splendor, but Splendor leveled up. So there's my, if you like X, you like Y. If you like Splendor, I think you will definitely like HerStory. It combines Splendor's mechanisms of very simple action on your turn. You're either claiming a token so that you can play a card, or eventually play a card. You can see my collection of tokens over here. Or you are claiming a card, or you are completing a card. And one of the nice little twists, I mentioned this to the designer as I was playing, is that oftentimes in these games when you reserve a card, it feels a little bit like a wasted turn. Splendor works around this by letting, whenever you reserve a card, you get a wild token. HerStory does this by giving you 2 points. So if you reserve a card on one of the 2 reserve slots, you get 2 points. Those are cards that you can later complete. You can also complete cards directly from the card row. All the cards have different little puzzles on them. So like this one gives you an ongoing resources whenever you want to complete more. A lot of the cards, a surprisingly high number of cards, say if you're in last. So the game actually incentivizes you to maybe linger behind the other players a little bit in terms of scoring so that you can get a bonus when you do score certain types of cards. A lot of cards with that little if you're in last benefit. There are other cards with conditional benefits like that too, like if you're in first or if you're in last or if you spend... this one actually has a second condition, a chapter needing at least 3 hourglasses. So I'm looking for cards that do that. It was a really nice puzzle to solve. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, if you enjoy Splendor, a little leveled up Splendor, I'd highly recommend HerStory. Next I have, this is an 8-person game that we played. You can play this as little as, with as few as 2 total players, but we played it with 8 players. It is the game Challengers. In Challengers, really interesting game. Like on paper, it will sound like not that much of a game, but it really works well because in Challengers, you are building a deck over the course of the game, a very slim deck, and then auto-playing that deck in a head-to-head matchup, which sounds odd, right? Like why would you, like you're not even really playing at that point. It's just auto-playing. You're revealing some cards. I won't go to the mechanisms, but you literally do not make, well, no, that's not true. You make very few choices as you're auto-playing your deck. Some cards might say like, this card has to choose one other card to reserve or add to the top of your deck. So there are some choices that you make while you're auto-playing, but there aren't many of them. Really, the crux of the game is the building side of it. You play an 8-round game of Challengers against a bunch of different opponents if you're playing an 8-player game. And at the end of each round, and even at the beginning of the first round, you draw a bunch of cards from a specific deck. You're going to choose 0, 1, or 2 of those cards to keep, and then you'll get to draw back up to 5 again, and then finally from all those cards, you will choose 2 to keep, 2 cards to keep. Often, sometimes it's 1, but usually it's 2. Those cards enter your deck. You can also choose to remove cards from your deck. And so this is the deck building part of the game. This is where the juicy decisions happen. Which cards are you going to add to your deck? Which are you going to remove? Which is, that kind of standard deck building stuff, but you have complete freedom to do it. The game isn't like waiting for you. You aren't like looking for a mechanism in the game that says you could trash cards now or you can go buy cards. It just happens at the end of every round that you get to hone your deck as you work your way through this tournament of champions, basically. And it's a lot of fun. I was surprised by how much fun it is, especially with the semi-auto-play nature of it. But the deck building part of it is really satisfying. It was maybe the top game of the convention that made me want to play again right away and try to do better at, because I feel like I didn't do that well, and I think I learned some things that would make me do better the next time. But yeah, I really enjoy this game. It's basically, in some ways, it is a very light version, very, very light version of Millennium Blades. So if you're looking for a version of Millennium Blades that is a lot lighter, I recommend Challengers. Next up, I have My City Roll and Build. My City is a game that I have a video about. It's a legacy game that played over, 21, 24 chapters, very quick chapters, simultaneous play. This is a roll and write version of it. And one of the clever things about the roll and write version is that the rules for each chapter can be printed on the pad itself. Each like you can see here, chapter 1, the new land, episode 2. So when I get to episode 3, I'm going to use a different piece of paper that shows a different version of this land with different rules down here. I really like that the rules are right in front of me at all times. The other little clever little aspect of this, that instead of using polyomino tiles, you are writing in things on your mat here. And so to create those polyominoes, you're rolling dice. You roll 2 dice, and those dice have a little icon that show you where you need to put those 2 dice together, and the way they fit together forms a polyomino shape, which I thought was a really clever way of creating polyominoes in a roll and write game. I've seen dice that have the full polyomino on the die itself, but I haven't seen them combined together in that way. I know I don't have a visual of that here, but it's I don't know, if you look up the game, you can see what these polyomino dice look like, how they 2 dice combine together to form one polyomino shape. If you like My City, I think you'll enjoy My City Roll and Build. Really, really clever roll and write game here. I'm trying to think if there's any other roll and write game that has a similar polyomino feel. Like we have some polyomino mini games in Rolling Realms. So if you like Rolling Realms, you might also like My City. Also has this evolving aspect because it's a game where you play through multiple chapters. I'm not sure if it's actually considered a legacy game, but we only played one session of it anyway. Next, I have a Nemalia. Nemalia. You have to look for the spelling in the description down below. Nemalia. It is a game about overlapping cards, square cards that have 4 different, or often 4 different, kind of terrains on them, 4 different animals / terrains on them. And you're overlapping them to form eventually close to what will be a 6x6 grid. You can't go beyond that grid. To solve different goals throughout the game. And I thought the goal system was really clever. I've seen this in games like Cartographer's Isle of Skye. This is one of my favorite goal systems in games like this, which is, I don't know if you can quite see it here, but it's basically this little card is saying, in the first round, we're going to score goal A, and I believe it was goal B. You see these crisscrossing lines that are connecting different things. So like in round 3, we'll score goal A and goal C, and so on, building up to certain rounds where you're scoring 3 different goals. But I really like how this adds variety to any game, really, where you're pairing together different goals that happen in a different order and in a different combination with each other. It adds a ton of replayability to this style of abstract game. And I just really like that system. So if you like, I would say Cartographers in particular. In fact, Cartographers ties to My City Roll and Build too. So if you like Cartographers, I think you'll also like My City Roll and Build, and you also might like Nemalia. Also, this system reminds me a lot of the game Hokkaido. Hokkaido has this overlapping card placement aspect where you're building this, I think, a village in Hokkaido, or maybe the island of Hokkaido. And this, you're kind of just building an area of a zoo, maybe, because you have penguins next to deserts and whatnot. I'm not sure exactly what you're building. That is Nemalia. One of the slightly older games, not all that old, that I played is a game called Honga. Honga was taught to me by Kevin, played with his son Everett, and I had a lot of fun with it. This is a game that came out from Haba in, I think, 2018. And the action selection system in this game is really cool. Plus, it has some really engaging mini games. The way it works is on your turn, you have a disc. One disc. That's all you have, one disc. And your choice is, where are you going to place this disc and how are you going to orient it on the board? And you can see on the board what these discs look like. You can see this disc right here. When someone places this disc, there are 0 hands on this section and this section. And so they don't get to take this or play this little mini game or / benefit or take this benefit of gaining a card. But the hands are facing these 2 other areas. They're facing Honga in the middle, which means you get to pet the cat. The cat is happy, the village cat. But also it points down here. I think there are 2 hands, maybe even 3 hands. 3 hands pointed at this resource. So that's saying you get, because there are 3 hands on that part of the tile, you get to gather 3 of this resource. You can see how that works then, right? You orient this tile where you want it to go, to choose which benefits, which actions you want to take, and how many times you want to take them. So if that person had taken that tile and oriented 3 hands towards this little mini game, they would have gotten to place 3 different, well, they would have had to pay for it, but they could have potentially paid and placed 3 different mastodons on this mini game here. Really clever action selection system. The only time I think I've ever seen anything like this, and it wasn't an action selection system, but it's rather an event system, is Pillars of the Earth. I believe has an event system that's kind of like this, where the current player draws a tile that is divided into 4, and they choose where to orient it. But yeah, as it feels a lot like worker placement with a worker that is different every time you play it, because that worker, after you place the tile, you draw a new tile, and you have this new little puzzle to solve. Where do I want to place it? Where can I orient my hands to gain all the things I want? Yeah, really satisfying game. This is one that I'd really like to play again too, and it's kind of it's a fairly welcoming game. Like I would say it's a Gateway Plus game. It isn't all that complicated, even though there's some very interesting decisions to make in it. That is Honga. Down to the final 2 here, all in no particular order, although I'm almost doing this in a reverse order of how I play these games. This is Broken and Beautiful. Very light set collection game with some very heavy gold resource tokens that you get to play. It uses this concept of kintsugi, which I believe represents the idea of using gold to make something broken even more beautiful than it was. So in this game, you are gaining some cards, and based on the top card that's on the deck and the card that wasn't selected that round in a snake draft, you have to break the pottery that matches those 2 things, the top card, the thing that wasn't unselected. So you gain these cards, you have cards from previous rounds in your tableau, and you have to break anything that matches those things that I just mentioned. Breaking is bad in this game. Like you break this beautiful piece of pottery. It's worth fewer points when it's broken, or worth no points really when it's broken. However, it opens up the potential for you to use gold to then fix that pottery. You can spend the gold based on that specific card to fix it, to make it more beautiful. When you do that, you flip over the card. Suddenly it's worth more points, whether it's more default points, more points for set collection. I thought this was a really interesting concept. The idea that you go from having something that is of value, worth some points, to having it be worth nothing. But because of that, it has the potential to be worth even more to you if you spend some resources on it. Just a really clever concept there that probably happens in some other games, but I can't think of any examples off the top of my head that do this. If you like set collection games, I think you'll enjoy this game. Like Archaeology is a game, a really solid set collection game that reminded me a little bit of this. But I can't think of a game off the top of my head that does this broken element. I'll discuss it more in another video in case people have any suggestions there or any games they can think that do that. But yeah, definitely has me thinking about that mechanism. And last, the very first game I played at the convention is a game that a designer, Chris, was carrying around. He was there to play a bunch of games at the convention, but including those games, he wanted to play his game Kraken Skulls, which will come to Kickstarter in the very near future. And I wasn't really at Geekway to play prototypes, but Chris seemed really nice. The game looked really polished when he pulled it out and showed it to me. And I thought, why not start the convention with a prototype, a little playtest here. So we playtested his game Kraken Skulls, and we had a lot of fun with it. It is a pirate game where you are moving around as you wish. You have a lot of freedom as to where you move onto these different either islands or open ocean, which do mean different things in the game. And depending on if you are alone or with someone else at that location, determines what you can do. You can either play the mini game of that location if you were there with someone else, or you can, actually, I might remember that correctly. You play the mini game. No, if you, well, I think it depends on the location. You're either playing the mini game or you are kind of burying treasure there and kind of doing your own thing. Actually, if you are alone, then you're just burying treasure there. If you're with other people, then you're playing the mini game. And there are also mini games related to a kraken that moves around. There's also a ship that moves around here. But I just love the vast variety of little mini games here. And that's why it reminded me a lot of the first game I talked about, Spots. Spots has these little mini games that you play, but there's a lot of player interaction in these mini games, where Spots is you're kind of doing your own thing. Both have different pros and cons, right? But it was really fun to go to the same place as other people and fight the Kraken together or fight against those people. And you're using cards along the way to influence the outcome of these battles and these mini games to manipulate dice. The cards are mostly how you get to have control, some agency over the dice themselves. But yeah, we had a lot of fun with Kraken Skulls. If you like pirate games like Libertalia, I'd recommend this. If you like spots, I'd recommend Kraken Skulls. I'm trying to think if there's any other games that remind me specifically of the sheer number of mini games in this. I think are pretty rare. I haven't seen this mini games with this number of like there are 6 in play here, although really only just 3. The islands are the mini games. But on the backside of these ocean locations are other mini games, and there's a whole other deck of other mini games that I think they're going to add during the campaign. So anyway, I had a lot of fun. I was really impressed by how far along this prototype is, and I look forward to seeing it on Kickstarter soon. That is the game Kraken Skulls. If you were at Geekway this past weekend, or if you have attended a convention recently, a gaming convention recently, and you played a few games that were highlights for you, I'd love to hear your thoughts about those games in the comments below. Or if you've played any of these games that I mentioned today, I'd love to hear your thoughts about them and what you love about them, and any other recommendations. The way I said, you know, if you like X game, you might also love Y game. I'd love to hear more about that in the comments here. In the description, you can see all the names for these games that I talked about today, as well as a link to my Geekway article, and the Geekway website, and The Mill, which is a channel about Stonemaier stuff from the perspective of people outside of the Stonemaier company. Yeah, thanks for joining me for this video. I'll see you in the comments below.